In the early 21st century, no region on Earth commands global attention with such consistent, volatile intensity as the Middle East. Today, it stands not just at a crossroads of history, but at the center of a vortex of global tension, a complex web of ancient grievances and modern ambitions. For decades, analysts have warned of its fragility. Now, that fragility has given way to something far more dangerous. The entire region is teetering on the brink of a much larger conflict, a conflagration that threatens to pull in nations from across the globe. The world watches, holding its breath, as missiles and drones cut across the night sky. This is not a distant, abstract threat. It is a terrifying spectacle of 21st century warfare, broadcast in real time, where advanced technology enables destruction at an unprecedented speed and scale. This new reality has shattered old assumptions, reshaped geopolitical alliances, and redrawn the battle lines in the sand. What was once a shadow war, a clandestine struggle fought through proxies, cyber attacks, and covert operations, has now erupted into the open. Recent military exchanges have dramatically and deliberately escalated this long-simmering conflict into direct, state-on-state confrontation. The unwritten rules of engagement, which for years kept the violence contained, have been abandoned. At the heart of this storm are two regional titans: Iran, a sprawling nation of nearly 90 million, driven by a revolutionary ideology and a fierce desire for regional dominance, and Israel, a technological and military powerhouse, forged in conflict and defined by a doctrine of absolute security. Neither stands alone. They are backed by powerful allies whose involvement, whether through arms shipments, intelligence sharing, or direct military support, adds fuel to the fire and raises the stakes for the entire international community. The consequences are devastating. These attacks have not been confined to their borders. They have reverberated across the region, striking targets in multiple countries. The conflict's geography is expanding, turning neighboring states into battlegrounds and destabilizing an already volatile area. And with this expansion comes a grave economic threat. The fighting now threatens to choke off the world's most critical energy supply routes. Through this narrow waterway, the Strait of Hormuz passes nearly a fifth of the world's daily oil consumption. Its closure, even for a few days, would send shockwaves through the global economy. The headlines from early 2026 paint a grim picture of this escalation. What began as a calculated risk spiraled into a full-blown crisis. According to intelligence reports, a joint U.S.-Israeli campaign, codenamed Operation Epic Fury, launched a series of major attacks against strategic targets inside Iran. The operation utilized stealth bombers, fifth-generation fighters, and long-range missiles to strike at the heart of Iran's military and nuclear infrastructure. Publicly, Washington framed the goal as the dismantlement of Iran's weapons programs. But privately, many analysts assessed the true, far more ambitious objective was regime change. Iran's retaliation was swift, widespread, and ferocious. It was the response they had spent decades preparing for. Waves of ballistic and cruise missiles struck American bases across the Middle East. Simultaneously, hundreds more missiles were launched toward Israeli cities, testing their multi-layered defense shield to its absolute limit. In a move of strategic desperation, Iran declared the Strait of Hormuz a military exclusion zone. Naval mines were deployed, and anti-ship missiles were put on high alert. Global shipping effectively ground to a halt. The reaction was immediate. Global energy markets plunged into chaos. Oil prices surged to historic highs, triggering panic on stock exchanges from New York to Tokyo and threatening a worldwide recession. This terrifying, direct military engagement is not a sudden aberration. It is the violent culmination of years of rising hostility, a predictable outcome of a conflict that has been escalating in plain sight. The most recent cycle of escalation began with the devastating 2023 war between Israel and Hamas. That conflict drew in Iran's proxies, leading to targeted Israeli strikes on high-ranking Iranian commanders and critical assets in Syria. Each action provoked a reaction, locking the adversaries in a dangerous cycle of violence. The brief but intense 12-day war in mid-2025 was a dress rehearsal for the current crisis. It was the first time both nations engaged in significant direct missile exchanges, shattering the taboo of state-on-state warfare. It was a warning that went unheeded. Now, in 2026, the death toll is rising daily. The conflict has spilled over. Reports indicate strikes have spread to Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, and major population centers like Tel Aviv are under constant threat. The shadow war has burst into the open, pulling in global powers and threatening a cascade of instability that could reshape the world order. The international community scrambles for a diplomatic solution, but the momentum of war is powerful. To understand why this is happening today, why these two nations are locked in such a perilous embrace, we must look beyond the immediate headlines and the frantic news alerts. This is not a sudden eruption of hatred. It is a product of a complex, often paradoxical history stretching back over a century, a history filled with surprising alliances, seismic betrayals, and the relentless pursuit of power. To truly comprehend the motivations driving leaders in Tehran and Tel Aviv, the deep-seated ideologies that fuel their actions, and the cold, hard strategic calculations that could lead to a catastrophic war, we need to peel back the layers of time. The real story of Iran and Israel is not just one of recent events. It is a long, intricate narrative of revolution, shifting alliances, nuclear ambition, and a geopolitical rivalry that has now brought the entire world to the brink. What if I told you that the war between Iran and Israel did not begin with the recent missile strikes? That these two bitter enemies, whose rhetoric today speaks of mutual annihilation, were once close and secretive allies? It's a chapter of history that feels almost impossible to reconcile with the present-day reality of shadow wars and open conflict. Yet, to understand the depth of their current animosity, we must first uncover the story of their forgotten friendship. It may seem unbelievable today, but for nearly 3 decades, from the 1950s through the late 1970s, Iran and Israel shared a robust and multifaceted strategic partnership. This wasn't a superficial diplomatic courtesy. It was a deep, pragmatic alignment of interests born from the geopolitical chessboard of the Cold War. It was an unspoken understanding, often referred to by historians as the Periphery Doctrine, an alliance of non-Arab states on the fringes of the Middle East, designed to contain the influence of their shared adversaries. They cooperated on intelligence, shared advanced military technology, and saw each other as vital counterweights to common regional threats. For both nations, the primary concerns were the rise of pan-Arab nationalism, championed by figures like Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser, and the looming shadow of Soviet expansionism in the region. The simple, powerful logic was that the enemy of their enemy was their friend. During this era, Iran was ruled by Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. He was a pro-Western monarch, a key pillar of American foreign policy in the Middle East, who sought to rapidly modernize his nation's economy and military. The Shah envisioned Iran as a dominant regional power, the policeman of the Persian Gulf, and aligning with another modern Western-backed military force like Israel fit perfectly into that vision. For Israel, the benefits were even more profound. Geographically and politically isolated among hostile Arab neighbors, the Shah's Iran was a crucial non-Arab ally. It provided strategic depth, a source of vital oil that bypassed Arab boycotts, and a partner in intelligence gathering. This shared sense of strategic isolation, a mutual distrust of Soviet influence, and a common fear of radical Arab movements formed the very bedrock of their relationship. The partnership was not merely diplomatic, it was deep, practical, and largely clandestine. Israeli experts advised Iran on agriculture and development projects. In return, Iran became a major oil supplier to Israel, with some of the crude even flowing through a secret joint pipeline project. Their intelligence agencies, Israel's Mossad and Iran's Savak, worked hand in glove, sharing information on Arab states and leftist movements. But the military collaboration ran even deeper. Israel, with its burgeoning and battle-tested defense industry, sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of advanced weaponry to Iran. This cooperation reached its zenith in the late 70s with Project Flower, a highly secretive joint venture to develop a new generation of ballistic missiles with a range capable of striking regional capitals. It was a project that, ironically, would lay the groundwork for the very missile technology that defines their conflict today. But this powerful alliance was a pact between governments, not peoples. Beneath the surface of official cooperation, opposition was growing inside Iran. The Shah's autocratic rule, the vast inequality between the westernized elite and the traditional masses, his close ties to the United States, often decried as the Great Satan, and his quiet friendship with Israel, the Zionist entity, stirred a potent cocktail of deep resentment across a wide spectrum of Iranian society. This partnership, built on the cold calculus of statecraft, was fragile because it ignored the rising tide of popular anger. A revolutionary storm was gathering on the horizon, one that would not only topple a 2,500-year-old monarchy, but would also shatter this forgotten alliance, fundamentally rewriting the rules of the Middle East and setting both nations on an inescapable collision course. In 1979, a massive uprising overthrew the Shah. This became the Iranian Revolution. The revolution replaced the monarchy, an Islamic government led by Ruhollah Khomeini. The new government rejected Western influence and declared Israel an enemy of Islam. Iran cut diplomatic ties with Israel and handed the former Israeli embassy in Tehran to the Palestinian Liberation Organization. From that moment on, the relationship between Iran and Israel shifted from alliance to hostility. Instead of direct war, the conflict became something different, a proxy war. Iran began supporting militant groups across the Middle East. One of the most powerful groups is Hezbollah. Iran helped create and train Hezbollah in the 1980s to fight Israel. Iran also supported groups like Hamas and the Islamic Jihad movement in Palestine. These groups became Iran's indirect way of confronting Israel. Meanwhile, Israel responded with covert operations, cyber attacks, and targeted assassinations aimed at slowing Iran's nuclear program. For decades, the conflict remained mostly hidden, but that changed in the 21st century. One of the biggest reasons for today's conflict is Iran's nuclear program. Israel believes a nuclear-armed Iran would threaten its survival. Iran says its nuclear program is peaceful. But over the years, nuclear scientists have been assassinated. Cyber attacks have targeted nuclear facilities. Airstrikes have hit military sites. These operations increase tensions dramatically. In recent years, the long-simmering shadow war between Iran and Israel has erupted into the open, moving dangerously closer to direct conventional warfare. The trajectory of this escalation has been steep and fraught with peril. A pivotal catalyst was the war between Israel and Hamas that began in late 2023. This conflict did not remain contained. Instead, it activated a network of regional actors, often referred to as the Axis of Resistance, a coalition of state and non-state groups aligned with Iran. In response to attacks from these groups, Israel intensified its long-standing campaign of airstrikes against Iranian targets inside Syria, aiming to degrade the military infrastructure of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, and its proxies. This tit-for-tat exchange culminated in an unprecedented move: direct Iranian missile and drone attacks on Israeli territory. This shattered a decades-old taboo against direct state-on-state strikes. The situation reached a fever pitch during the brief but intense 12-day Iran-Israel war in 2025, a conflict that, while short, demonstrated the terrifying potential for rapid escalation. And now, tensions have surged once more. a fresh wave of strikes between Iran, Israel, and their allies has rippled across the Middle East. Missile attacks have been reported targeting military bases and strategic assets in multiple countries, creating a complex, multi-front battlefield where a single miscalculation could have devastating consequences. The situation remains exceptionally volatile. This conflict matters far beyond the immediate geography of the Middle East, for reasons that directly impact global stability and prosperity. The first and most immediate reason is the global energy supply. The Middle East is the artery through which a vast portion of the world's oil and natural gas flows. Critical maritime choke points, especially the Strait of Hormuz, are exceptionally vulnerable. Any major war could disrupt these shipping lanes, either through direct attacks, naval blockades, or prohibitive insurance costs for tankers. The result would be an immediate and severe shock to global energy markets, sending prices soaring and threatening to trigger a worldwide economic recession. The second reason is the intricate web of military and strategic alliances. Israel is a close, treaty-bound ally of the United States, a relationship built on decades of security cooperation and shared interests. A significant attack on Israel could invoke American defense commitments, potentially drawing the world's foremost military power directly into the conflict. On the other side, Iran has cultivated increasingly strong ties with Russia and China. While not formal military alliances in the Western sense, these partnerships involve weapons sales, economic support, and crucial diplomatic cover at institutions like the United Nations. A regional war could thus become a flashpoint for great power competition, pitting these global giants against one another in a dangerous proxy struggle. The third, and perhaps most complex reason, is the threat of cascading regional instability. Iran has spent decades building a network of powerful proxy forces. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Palestine, and various militias in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen act as force multipliers, allowing Iran to project power and challenge its adversaries without engaging its own conventional military. These groups can open new fronts in a conflict, turning a bilateral dispute into a multi-country conflagration. This asymmetric structure means a regional war would not be a simple affair between two nations. It would be a chaotic, sprawling crisis that could destabilize governments, create massive refugee flows, and fuel extremism across an already fragile region. A regional war could very quickly become a global crisis. The conflict between Iran and Israel isn't just a modern political dispute over borders or resources. It is the deeply entrenched result of seismic historical shifts, revolutionary ideology, decades of clandestine proxy wars, persistent nuclear tensions, and an unyielding geopolitical rivalry for dominance in the Middle East. Understanding the layers of history, from forgotten alliances to modern escalations, is essential to grasping why the Middle East remains one of the most complex and consequential regions on Earth. It is a conflict with local roots but global branches, which is why the world is watching so closely, holding its breath to see what happens next.